Hello, everybody, and thank you for downloading another episode of the Time On podcast. And boy, it has been another big week in footy. This is our big opening round preview show. But there's been, of course, tribunal news. Jimmy Webster absolutely launched into and took out Jai Simpkin in the pre-season games. We'll be unpacking the fallout from another massive concussion story and the remarks from legendary coach Alistair Clarkson in the post-match.
Yes, and we've opened up the Time On community mailbag. We're going to answer your burning questions. We're also going to be taking a look at the draft prospects who we think might make an immediate impact this season.
We'll also be looking at some of the players that need to take it to another level. Some of the high draft picks from years gone by who are yet to take their game to the elite level. We'll be looking at them and putting the pressure on them.
And then to wrap it up, we're going to give you our top predictions for season 2024.
And then finally, our tips for opening round. Without further ado, Nick, it's time to start episode 37 of the Time On podcast.
Here comes Bunny, wheels around, gathers the football. He's kicked the vertical.
Kakoe launches from 50.
Came out to Wait. Wait said wait. Got it up to May. Kavala.
Do a push-up with him on top of you, Jakey.
How did he do that?
Flies, pies, win the close one. Collingwood are premiers in 2023.
Was doing that. Why didn't he blow time on?
Well, that's the thing. Herd had kicked the ball, then he's brought the hand up for time on.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Time On podcast. And yes, it is Footy Christmas Eve, Nick. Footy is nearly back. Was it 3 more days until we get football back in our lives? I am your co-host, as always, Mr. Darcy Slam Duncan, and I'm joined by a man who has just removed the black and white face paint from his face after attending another Pies documentary. I don't know how he found the time. It is my great friend, Mr. Nicholas Crickis. How are you today, Nick?
You sound surprised you don't know how I find the time. I tell you.
Well, judging by your appearance and your attire today, I think I do know how you find the time.
Yeah, that is me wearing a Jamie Elliott kicking the goal off the siren Prince t-shirt. Bought off I think a Swoop Loot
Your
website.
Sickness knows no bounds,
No,
Nick.
it does not. It does not.
How have you been? What have you been up to?
I'm good. Big weekend. Very busy weekend. We had our Supercoach draft on Sunday night.
I think you went quite well. I think you picked about 15 Collingwood players, and there's only 14 people on the team.
I would have picked more if it wasn't for some Autobots getting the call.
I know. Someone picked Josh Eyre before you could, unfortunately.
Yes, watch Take the Steps documentary on Sunday. What a nice, well put together documentary featuring the final successes of the Mighty Pies. That was a bloody good watch.
So this is a documentary made by the Collingwood media team.
Yes, that's right.
And you went to was it the world premiere of it?
Yeah, you could say that. Yeah. No, honestly, there was a cinema, so there was a booking every single hour on the hour or every 2 hours. There was at least probably 200 people per sitting, grown men and ladies, women with their full-on kit. Yeah, I didn't know. I was just more of a casual attire.
20-year-old grandmothers.
No, that's right. And then, it was a really good watch and entertaining as well because you see a little bit more of a different side to the players. You hear a bit of swearing. I heard Pendle swear. I'm like, fucking oath.
He's an upsetting citizen. He wouldn't do that.
Yeah, I know. You'd think so. Fly McRae, just a brilliant connector. I mean, I've heard him in person as well in some private shows and just a really well-rounded and grounded person. And I mean, it speaks, the results speak for itself, the way he can connect with the group. But yeah, just the way he themes things, uses brilliant analogies, and it's just funny. It's like, you hear it so often in football when you play for the coach. We genuinely have a club, 44 individuals that would probably take a bullet for Fly. Like that's the tightness that he's created.
I'm so envious of you having a great coach like McRae. I listened to him on the Howie games as well.
How good was that episode?
Fantastic. I mean, he's such a grounded individual, as you said, but I do feel the fact that he had such a non-linear path to the head coaching position. I think we got at 48 or so years old. People usually passed over at that age, and he's gone on to being the best coach in the league. What a tremendous club he has built here at Collingwood. Yeah, anything else besides that? Watching the Pies documentary?
Nah, that was pretty low key. I did go out to reminisce on Saturday night. So it was basically like a top 50 countdown of all the most famous pop and dance music or in the electronic scene. But they put it to the fans. You vote. You put it to the fans. And I got a little legless. I did remember the countdown in patches. 50 to 40. pretty good. 40 to 30, pretty strong. 30 to 20, we're heaving. And then 20 to number 2, I sort of don't remember too much. And then
Sort of like Warwick Capper at halftime, that famous game. It's like, I was good in the first quarter, second half, don't remember what happened.
I was flying. Yeah, I actually got a tap on the shoulder from air traffic control. I said, Nick, you got to get down.
Well, I'm glad you had a good time at Reminisce on the Saturday, Nick. I didn't get up to too much. I watched a lot of pre-season games. So I should probably get stuck into the news here. Big story today. It was the bump delivered by Jimmy Webster on North Melbourne co-captain Jai Simpkin, which unfortunately caused another concussion for Jai Simpkin. I think it was his third in recent memory.
Yeah, third in, I think it's 12 months.
Oh, the terrible scenes. This is the kind of act that we're trying to outlaw from the game, Nick. We didn't think we'd see it again. It was, as described by the legal counsel representing the people or the players who are now putting a lawsuit against the AFL with the 100-plus people, as a prehistoric act that has no place in the game today, does it?
No, it was a brutal hit. There was no accident. Like, make no mistake, he genuinely lined up Simpkin. I know footy's a very contact sport. You know, you want to try and, if you're not going to affect the contest, you want to sort of make them feel it. We've got to eliminate that from the game. Like, there's no such thing as now, I'm going to make him earn that kick. I'm going to make him earn that touch. The second you get it wrong, you're done.
And especially for me in a pre-season game, 7 days after we saw Sam Pepple do when he got suspended for 4 weeks for a similar bump, this was even worse. Not premeditated, but what sort of outcome are you going to get when you're trying to line someone up falling out of bounds? The margins of error are so small. You get it wrong, you're changing someone's life. You're changing how he has to live the rest of his life, because we hear from Marcus Adams, Brisbane talked about that the next 60 years of his life, it could look pretty poor.
Yeah,
and I mean, what you're doing to someone like Jai Simpkin, a young man, you're changing what his career not even looks like, but how he tends to live his life. It's just something we cannot have in the game anymore.
I think the AFL are going to make an example of it. I'm thinking it's a 5+ week.
People are calling for 10 weeks. David King this morning wants 10.
10s. I mean, what did Barry Hall get for punching
seven for Ben Staker?
I know things are different and times have changed, but
That's
I think
the past,
10's a bit harsh. I know, but I think upwards of 4. I think 5's around the mark.
I'm expecting 6+, because it's gone straight to the tribunal. I think St Kilda have said that we're expecting a longer ban.
No doubt.
Andrew Dillon was on AFL 360 tonight. He says, well, St Kilda have said they expect a long ban. It probably will be a long ban. Did you catch the fallout and the comments from legendary coach Alistair Clarkson?
I did hear about this. I mean, we know Alistair Clarkson is he wears his heart on his sleeve. He's a very passionate, proud individual. Can get a
you
little
can say
heated.
that. Well, I got a little clip here
nicely
from the Channel 9 News, bit of the rap sheet, as Tom Morris has called it, of Alistair Clarkson's previous indiscretions.
Since 9 News broke the story of Clarkson's outburst, the coach went into damage control. Yet again. This was an exchange that was emotional in defence of our captain, but unnecessary, and the language I used was inappropriate. I've reached out to Ross Lyon and both the St Kilda players to apologise. This is the latest in a growing rap sheet for Clarkson. In 2012, he abused a teenage umpire during his son's under-9s match. A year later, he was forced to apologise for a verbal altercation with 2 VFL players and an 84-year-old Port Melbourne trainer, who was also caught out at Melbourne Airport calling a journalist a cockhead after a planned media conference. And as recently as last year, he apologised to a female 9 News reporter for a threatening remark. These latest claims almost forcing the AFL to bring Clarkson back into line.
It's a lot, Nick. This is the greatest coach of all time, in my opinion, but the rap sheet speaks for itself.
Some people get white line fever, and he's clearly one of them, but I don't know. Old habits die hard. He's He's mid-50s. He's almost in his 60s, is he? So I don't think Clarko is going to change as a person. But, I mean, some of his attitude's got to change.
I know. The way he approaches the game is what makes him so brilliant, because he makes people want to go out there and put their body in the line every time. And he stands up for his players. Like, as a player, as a fan, you're unhappy with the language used, because it was a homophobic slur aimed at Jimmy Webster. But you're not upset at him standing up for your players, especially when an act like that happens on the field. But he cannot use that sort of language, because people like Mark Robinson, Sam McClure, they're calling for a ban for Alistair Clarkson to miss games. Where do you stand on that?
I mean, a ban and missing games for name calling and, saying something out of frustration is a bit stiff for mine. But then even taking a step back, could you imagine someone like Fly McRae reacting to that if Nick Dacos got lined up and hit like that? I don't think so. Of course, everyone's going to be angry in that, but probably the way some other coaches conduct themselves would be a little bit better and more professional than what Clarko is. But I think that's way over the top if we're going to call for a ban for a slur like that.
No, I think a hefty fine will do the trick.
Right.
And Clarkson hopefully now learns his lesson. Nick, before we wrap up all the news, other sports, anything else you captured over the weekend, because the NRL was actually in Las Vegas this weekend. Their opening round, we're up in the northern states. I don't quite understand it myself, because the NRL is actually back now. They're going to be competing against us on Saturday night. Did you catch any of the NRL at Allegiant Stadium in Las Vegas?
I can't say I did. I think
No.
it was at Reminisce. Mid-countdown.
Wait, wasn't that Saturday night?
When was the
You
game?
were at the Taking the Steps documentary, actually.
Put it this way, my weekend was just very jumbled. It was a busy weekend. I said that, and I mean that. No, I didn't catch it, but 40,000 plus fans rocking up to the game. I think 14,000 of those fans travelling from Australia.
They deserve a lot of respect for this.
Oh, definitely.
And now, I begged Peter V'landys last week. He's actually a bit of a genius when it comes to this sort of stuff. He's built the game now in America to some sort of standard, 40,000 people. He built the Everest, which is now arguably the biggest race in Australia. Are you jealous of the innovation that's been shown here by the National Rugby League?
Look, a little bit the fact that, they got to go to Las Vegas on the world stage. But let's not forget, rugby league is a world sport. So it is recognised in parts of Europe, South Africa, in England as well.
Yeah, well, it's probably biggest in England. So we could see English people coming over to Las Vegas to watch the Australian rugby, National Rugby League.
But for mine, I admire Aussie rules football. It's unique. It's its own thing. I know we try to bring the game to China. We're trying to grow the game all over the place. You know what? I don't think it's ever going to be that globalized sport. So let's just embrace what it is. It's Aussie, grassroots sport. That's just what it is. I don't think it'll ever change.
You're happy for it just to be our local sport that we can, the worst of the world can enjoy if they want to, but if they don't, we're not too fussed over it.
That's right.
Because I've seen what happened with the NFL, though. They're playing in Munich, they're playing in Mexico. I mean, this is a sport that is just localized to America, but they've gone global as well. Do you think the rest of the world could enjoy our great game?
Well, which other country realistically would understand the rules and actually bear to sit there for about 120 minutes? I don't think many can. I know a lot of my Greek relatives overseas thinking, what is this? They call it Beponi. So Beponi is the Greek word for cantaloupe. So they just call our game cantaloupe. Like, what's that Beponi?
Why are they punching the cantaloupe backwards?
They got no clue what's going on. There's so many rules. Plus, we've introduced so many rules over the last while.
It's hard to keep up just for us Australians, to be honest.
Right.
No. They deserve a lot of credit, but I'm content with how Australian rules sits right now. But I'm not content with the games being in New South Wales and Queensland this week, and they should be at the MCG. Final one, Nick. It is the team that we both love. It is the Liverpool Football Club. Did you catch another late show from the Liverpool team?
I did watch the highlights the following morning. I just couldn't stay up that night. I was, again, still at the countdown. But yeah, just phasing out of that.
This is a 40-hour countdown. At least it felt like that.
It certainly felt like that. No, I watched Nunez, though. Put us 1-0. Late 99th minute?
Yeah. It was a 99th minute. I didn't know that minute actually existed until this year. The amount of times Liverpool have scored deep in the stoppage time, or time on, effectively.
It did, deep in time on.
It is Klopp time as we now know it.
What's the rule, though? You just play... So injury time is defined as the minutes played after the original 90 or until Liverpool score?
I think it is till Liverpool score. It used to be Fergie time in the 90s, early 2000s. Now it's effectively Klopp time.
His little stand-up is for Nunez! Yes! How on earth do they do it? Week after week after week. Darwin Nunez saves the day for Liverpool and earns them an incredible 3 points at Nottingham Forest. Straight back from injury, straight from the bench. Liverpool are dancing to Darwin Nunez's delight.
All right, that's enough Liverpool fan services episode, Nick. We'll move on.
One more thing I want to bring up. Clayton Oliver has been declared fit.
Wait,
and
what?
will be playing round one.
Clayton Oliver's playing?
Yes,
You said his career was over a week ago.
I did not say such a thing.
I was trying to save you the embarrassment.
He's back. Looks pretty fit. I mean, look, we don't know what the longevity is, but hey, taking it, calling a spade, probably the best contested ball player in the game. And at his best, he's a top 5 player in the league.
Absolutely. He is as good a ball winner as I've ever seen, to be honest. And he hits the scoreboard as well. Jeez, if he's back fit and firing, the D's are a threat. I'm sorry, they have to be a threat. You had them missing the 8 last week, is that correct?
Are they a threat or are they just another challenge again for the...
Didn't you beat them by like a kick last year? And they had Clary with half a string and no forward line?
Those are details. We beat them. Doesn't matter how, you just got to win. I mean, going Fly McRae there.
We won't worry about the past, Nick, okay? Because it haunts you so much as a Collingwood fan. It is time to open up the DMs, Nick. It's time to listen to our fans. Now, we opened up the time on mailbag on Sunday night, and we did get a few questions in. These are our big burning questions for 20... Oh, shit, turn that fire down, Nick. It's burning right on my feet right now. You weren't ready for that one. It's so hot, these questions. Now, the first question is... Well, I won't announce the name, but he is one of the time on classics, one of our absolute favourites. What are your thoughts on a few murmurs out of the kennel? I've heard that Caleb Daniel has been replaced at halfback by Buku Karmas. More Bevo magnet movement from our favourite Tom from Sunbury. Now, this is a big one.
He's got some mail.
Now, Tom has some serious mail. There's actually another part to this as well. It says, P.S. Few clubs who played finals last year are already sniffing around Taron Thomas. Now, we didn't mention Taron Thomas's suspension on this show. We don't like to give him any airtime, but that is a little bit of big news. They have met with his management. Another one to keep an eye on throughout the year.
Watch this space.
Now, Caleb Daniel was an all-Australian halfback a couple of years ago. You're telling me right now he's been shifted out of the back line for Category B rookie Buku Karmas.
So that's Caleb Daniel not featuring in the best 23. That's
Well,
pretty big.
potentially it could be a sub, he could be on the bench, but they don't see him as part of their back six.
I mean, the last 7 years or so, you'd think Caleb Daniel was probably in the first, half dozen to 10 players picked every week.
He was considered the best kick in the competition for a short period of time.
I've got to say, though, so Bevo has never made top 4 in his tenure as coach at the Bulldogs. Now, it's his 10th season, I believe, as head coach of the Bulldogs.
As the greatest coach ever of the Bulldogs,
Yeah,
correct?
that's right.
Put some respect on that name.
These are all facts. And he's always been under a bit of heat, a bit of questioning and
From this
scrutiny with his movements in the magnets and playing players out of position. I actually like this. So let's not kid ourselves. They didn't make finals in 2022. They did make finals in 2022. They just snuck in when Collingwood beat Carlton by a point. Then they didn't make finals last season. I don't mind the fact that he's going to go, you know what? You're not getting games based on reputation. You're getting games based on how I value your preseason and your input to the team. So I like that. It's almost like we're going to wipe the slate clean. And I feel like this is so important, especially at the 10-year mark. Like you got to just almost draw a line in the sand again and go, no, I'm not giving you, because you got runs on the board, I'm not going to give you a little free hit here. You got to earn your spot back. I remember like Buckley in 2017, it was getting age. And then we sort of had this 2018 run Collingwood where we sort of wiped the slate clean, restarted. I think you could probably say the same with Ken Hinkley and Port Adelaide this last year.
Yep.
It was almost like a bit of a reset. We're going to go things, we're going to go value-based here, not just worry about what you've done in the past. A nice little reset. So maybe this is something that propels the Doggies to actually be, a finals force or a genuine player in the finals this year.
I think they've lacked this for a long time, and there's accountability. People who have shown up each week thinking they can just go about their business but don't actually play the role, which is what the team needs. Now, we know they've had so many great midfielders. They've sometimes lacked goals up forward. Sometimes they've lacked good defenders. Now you've got people actually fighting for their spots every single week. You've got a brilliant player. I still think he's a good player in Caleb Daniel.
Definitely.
Potentially removed from the team for a Category B rookie in Buku Karmas just because he wants it more. And he's also playing a new role, Buku Karmas. I think this could really propel the Dogs this year. I really agree with you in that regard. No, never came top 4. They've got all the talent in the world. They've got all these young players that have been gifted through Next Generation Academies, Father Sons, and they should be banging down the door for this side. So maybe the 2016 Premiership team, the 2021 Grand Final team,
they'll let go.
It's not going to be the same nucleus this year. It's going to be a new era coming through, obviously buoyed by Libba, Bont, some of the stalwarts from previous years.
English.
But you need to move the magnets around. Maybe Bevo, the magnet mover, might do it in the preseason and not 6 games into the year when they're actually going pretty well.
Yeah, and we spoke about it last week, but I don't like seeing Aaron Norden's name getting flipped around. He's going to be backline 1 week, he's going to forward. No, settle on a position. Just play him in the same place here for the whole season. You can't be spinning these magnets too often.
You need to give him time to develop in that position. Remember Darcy Moore. He was put forward, he was put back. I mean, you always knew he was going to be a star centre-half back. And when he was able to get time into that position, maybe 60, 70 games, he developed one of the best players in the league. You need probably 80 to 100 games in that position to feel comfortable.
Yes. Yeah, you don't want to hamper and curtail their development at that age. So, yeah, look, I think it's going to be, if that comes to fruition, pretty big and bold move, but I think that's the step in the right direction for the Doggies.
Absolutely agree, Nick. Another great email from Tom from Sunbury. Keep them coming through, Tom. We know you have the best mail in the business. Now, Nick, this is a bit dicey. All right? This is our next question as part of the 2024 burning questions, but it is a voicemail. We open up the DMs, but we also open up the voice note. I haven't heard this yet.
I haven't heard it either. We're going to play it live.
I don't know what he's going to say.
No idea.
but I will say it is from one of our all-time favourites. He's been on this podcast many times himself, but what is his big question for 2024?
Das, Nick, big fans of the pod, as you know. Just on the toilet, dropping off a quick Josh Dacos. But thought I'd have time for a question. Tom Green, I reckon, my tip for the Brownlow. I feel like he's a bit underrated at all times. Why do you reckon that is? See you, fellas.
Wow. He's found time for us in between his domestic flights and taking a crap.
That is a very, very well put together voicemail there. And you can hear the ventilation as well, Matt. Cubicle.
Yeah, he needs it. Have you been in a cubicle with him before? It does not smell good.
Don't want to know.
Tom Green, one of the stars of the competition, but maybe not someone we talk about enough as one of the superstars, one of the top 10 players. I think Dane's just trying to tell us right now he's about to ascend to that level.
I love Tom Green. Now, I was a big rap for him last season, had him on my super coach, and he won me some serious games. But Tom Green's probably one of the best inside ball midfielders in the comp right now. Honestly, I reckon he'd be taking it up to the very best. He'd be taking it up to Clayton Oliver.
What is his big question for 2024?
Das, Nick, big fans of the pod, as you know. Just on the toilet, dropping off a quick Josh Dacos. But thought I'd have time for a question. Tom Green, I reckon, my tip for the Brownlow. I feel like he's a bit underrated at all times. Why do you reckon that is? See you, fellas.
Wow. He's found time for us in between his domestic flights and taking a crap.
That is a very, very well put together voicemail there. And you can hear the ventilation as well, Matt. Cubicle.
Yeah, he needs it. Have you been in a cubicle with him before? It does not smell good.
Don't want to know.
Tom Green, one of the stars of the competition, but maybe not someone we talk about enough as one of the superstars, one of the top 10 players. I think Dane's just trying to tell us right now he's about to ascend to that level.
I love Tom Green. Now, I was a big rap for him last season, had him on my super coach, and he won me some serious games. But Tom Green's probably one of the best inside ball midfielders in the comp right now. Honestly, I reckon he'd be taking it up to the very best. He'd be taking it up to Clayton Oliver.
I was going to say, he could be the spiritual successor to Clayton Oliver.
Yep.
And he's kicked a couple of goals as well. He's probably a bit more progressed than Oliver was. Or Oliver was very good in his early years as well. Probably a bit bad even. But man, I love Tom Green. I think he could win the Brownlow this year. I agree.
But the reason why he might feel a bit underrated or in the footy circles, I think because he is surrounded by so much silk. You've got Josh Kelly, you've got Stephen Coniglio, you've got Finn Callahan coming up and running now. You've got, who else is there in the centre circle?
The aging Callan Ward. You've got the brilliant Kieran Biggs putting it down their throats. They've got a very strong midfield mix.
But I think he's really emerging now as a premier inside midfielder.
Absolutely. I think he'll be All-Australian this year. So Coniglio was excellent last year. I mean, Josh Kelly is a star. These guys have been All-Australian or on the precipice of All-Australian. Tom Green hasn't got there just yet, but he's so young. So that now could be the year where he goes to that elite level. And I think they will need him to go to that level in order to win a grand final or to even play off in a grand final again. He is that good. Love that email from you, Dan.
Brownlow Smokey, he'd be paying all right.
Yeah, I think it's about $12, $14. So he's about fifth or sixth favourite. People have put a lot of attention in him this year in terms of the Brownlow betting odds. I think Dacos is still clear favourite. Love that he mentioned Josh Dacos in that little clip, but didn't mention the fact that Nick is overwhelming favourite for the Brownlow medal. Nick, I've got two more questions here for you, but they are questions without notice. I want a question from you. What is your burning question for 2024 for me? Do you have anything on the tip of your tongue, or I'll move on to my one?
I'm going to put it to you. What happens if the Bombers do not get close to finals this year?
That's a tough question. I'm not happy you asked it, to be honest.
It's a tough one. It's going to be
realistic.
21 years.
It is realistic. I'm not worried that they would blow up the club again, which they've done every 2 to 3 years. But it's a reality. If we came 13th, 14th, we were uncompetitive, and we didn't show that we're a chance to at least play finals with a month left, then there'll be changes. Again, I don't know if Scott's guaranteed his job if we looked really poor this year. But what will I do? Personally, I'll continue to be very depressed and sad about this football club.
Will your love for the game somewhat diminish, this season? Say if you were bottom 4, not even looking like a chance for finals, would you feel like a part of the game, or the love you have for the game being like, you know what, it's taken a backward steps this season.
It can't, though, because I'm already at the very bottom of the stairs. So I can't go backwards.
I appreciate it.
I never have any optimism for Essendon because they haven't shown me any reason to be optimistic.
Too realistic, yeah.
If they were to have a very, very poor season, I'll just put it with all the other poor seasons. I'm waiting for a year where we start well and we look like we can compete with the best teams.
Well, that was last year. I genuinely think that was last year for you guys,
we
up until a point.
Yeah, we beat Melbourne and gather round. We could have beaten you on Anzac Day, and you were to the top 4 teams. We actually beat the Giants in the first 8 weeks as well. So we matched it against the best teams. But Essendon never sustained that for 15, 16 rounds. There's always a lull of like 5 to 6 weeks. They're the best teams. They overcome that. They come back fit and firing, and they have another dominant 4 to 5, 6 weeks in the back end of the year to put them towards finals. Essendon never informed going to finals. They're just limping or finding a way to fall into 8th. Now, until I see that, I'm never going to have too much optimism with this team.
Well, even though we're rivals, I actually would like to see some sort of run, similar to what Carlton went on, but some sort of run.
I dream of
where
that.
Where Essendon are actually up and about, they're commanding a home final, and they've got an army behind them. Listen to the podcast with James Hurd and Mark Howard on the Howie games. I mean, he just mentioned, the Essendon army, in the 2000s, the 90s, and the 80s, and how big they were. Like, I feel like that's dissipated over the last 20 years.
Yeah, I think we've been surpassed by Collingwood, by arguably Richmond during their successful period.
I think we forget how big Essendon's fan base is and their true love for the game because of
lack of
relevance.
success. I know. Well, we are an international fan base as well. We have fans all over the world. Very, very strong fan base in the territory as well, which you probably don't see just because there's not many games up there. But we are a very, very strong club. But that strength is always tied to on-field success. And in the early 2000s, we had that. In the 90s, we had that. We haven't had that for effectively 20 years. So remember when Richmond won? A lot of fans came out of the woodwork.
Out of the woodwork.
Now, I didn't say your fans came out of the woodwork last year, but there was people that probably weren't as active Pie supporters that became very active once you looked good in the last 2 years. That will happen with Essendon, but I just don't know what day it's going to be. My question to you, Nick, it's going to be short, sweet, and simple, okay? Now, I've got a couple of Pies friends, and they did the big thing when you won a flag. Get a Pies tat, okay? Now, if Collingwood were to go back-to-back, would you consider even a small tattoo just to celebrate the fact that your most beloved club is now the best in the land?
Going back-to-back, you know what? I'd consider it.
Yeah.
But like what part of the body would it go on? Is it going to go like on my ankle and shit?
Daniel Zanning, Daniel from
I've
Gowan
seen
Bray.
it.
He's got, I think there's an ankle tat.
It's,
It doesn't look too bad. It doesn't look great, but
No,
it doesn't
I've
look
seen
too bad.
It looks all right.
Would you consider something like that?
It's probably a bit too big for mine.
Okay.
Look, I'd have to go through some designs. Let's just get there first. Let's get enough wins to qualify.
You're so cautious of this sort of thing. You would never talk about back-to-back, even off a premiership.
No.
Even after talking about this non-stop for the last 3 months, the thought of another premiership, I'm not going to indulge that.
I'm not going to
indulge that.
I'm leaving 1 week at a time.
Listeners, watchers as well, if they win another premiership, we'll hold him to it. A tat will be on the way.
I'm tatless at the moment, so I think if you have a tat, you can't donate blood. Not that I've ever actually donated blood in my life. Probably I should. I don't know.
Oh, I don't like needles. I wouldn't be doing it. But if they were to go on a 3-peat, then obviously you would have to do it.
Jeez, yeah, I'd have to almost accommodate whatever tattoo I get to almost
to add to it.
That's right. Have the ability to upsize it to the following year.
All right, everybody.
Those
are the big burning questions heading into 2024. Is your seat
hot.
all warmed up
It
now?
is absolutely
The attack of a couple of layers?
like a Chili's hot plate.
All fried up for you. We'll move on to the next segment.
Now, Das, we mentioned it in the intro. We're going to talk to some players who we want to see take the next step this season. And these are the players that have been in the system, sort of call it 4, 5+ years. We want to see them almost have that breakout and literally just grab the season by the scruff of the neck because we know they're capable. We know we've seen it in flashes, but we want to see them take that next step. It's the hardest thing for you to do. We want to see them take the next step and literally bridge their best and their worst and just be a consistently good footballer.
We'd like to see it from a couple of players, Nick. I think I've identified that the 6-7 year breakouts when we finally see if a player can go from good to a star or a star to a superstar. And there's a lot of players in this bracket. We're talking like 2018, 2019 draft. But these are players which we know are supremely talented, which have the capability to go to the next level. Nick, you've got a couple of circled there. Who do you have on your list?
I'm going to go start with Keziah Pickett from Melbourne. I think he has the capability and the capacity to be probably the premier small forward in the competition. I'd say only second to Charlie Cameron. So, I mean...
What do you consider Toby Green?
I see Toby Green as he's a different player to Charlie Cameron in that small, enigmatic, silky, quick player. Look, all right, I'll take it back. Toby Green's number 1. Charlie Cameron's number 2. And then I think Cozzy Pickett has all the makings to be that number 3. Yep. Personally, I think Bobby Hill will be the number 3 this year, based on what we saw last year in the final series. Okay. That's the trajectory he's on.
Should be at Essendon, but all right.
No, he should be. Thank you, Jason McCartney. So I think Keziah Pickett, not to say he went backwards last year, right? I think he still had a pretty solid year. He started the season on absolute fire. 4 goals, 8 tackles against the Bulldogs. Unfortunately, lined up. I can't remember the poor player.
It was Bailey Smith.
Out. Bailey Smith, there you go. I mean, that was probably just as brutal as a hit.
Talking about on the radio today is like that happened today. It's like 4+ weeks, but things have changed. Society's changed. How we view concussion has changed in the past 12 months.
Definitely. So I think his momentum was probably a little bit stunted at the start, but finished with 37 goals, ranked first in total tackles inside 50, and then 7th for goal assists. The thing is, though, the 37 goals he kicked, only 11 were kicked against finalists, so top 8 teams. So what I want to see Cozzy Pickett do is do it in those big, important games against the better opposition. Mm-hmm. Now, we understand Melbourne had a bit of a form slump. You know, the connection between midfield and forwards wasn't quite there. We also know that their tall forwards, they were rotating. Petty was in there for a bit. They had
Van Rooyen,
very young, raw kid.
Joel Smith, kind of a pseudo key forward at times as well.
Yep, Ben Brown couldn't really get on the park either. And when he did, and then they even played McDonald as well.
Yeah, so barely played all year.
He wasn't, I guess, conditioned to being the foil to, an out-and-out one-on-one forward, that would play every single week. So we understand there's a lot of fluidity with that forward line. But Cozzy Pickett, I don't know if he hasn't got the tank yet, but he's got all the makings to be a premier small forward in the comp.
I think he's well on his way to being a premier small forward. But as you said, I don't think he's impacted the big games often enough. I was there in the qualifying final, even the semi-final. He could have taken over those games. He didn't. He missed big chances and big moments.
He had big chances.
Now, I think he kicked 37 goals last year. I think he kicked 40 the year before and 41 before that.
So very impressive.
So
very
40 goals each year from like a 23-year-old small forward. It's a good return, but you want him to be more standing up in the big games and taking leadership of that forward line because he's probably the most talented forward in that forward line. Jacob Van Rooyen's still a very young developing player. You want him to be not even the captain, but just the leader of the Melbourne forward line, which sometimes looks bereft of scoring options.
And more influential against the better teams.
Okay. I think that's a good call, Nick. I love Cozzy Pickett, though. We've been talking him up on this show, and everyone has that he could be, a 4th, 5th string midfielder and impact games, like the Cyril-esque qualities. We just haven't seen that often enough. I love that one.
Who have you got, Das?
Now, this is an interesting one. So this player's already established. This is a good player. This is someone that made the Taiwan top 40 list, if you're watching. He's a very, very talented player. But my question is, what is the hardest leap in football? It's not to go from decent high draft pick to a good player. It's to go from a good player to a super duper star. Can Luke Davies-Uniacke become a super duper star in the AFL? 14 games last year. He's had a good career, a decent career as a top 5 pick. But for me, he hasn't been a superstar just yet because he hasn't impacted winning and he hasn't played enough games often enough. I think he came second in the best and fairest 2 years ago to, I think, maybe even Jai Simpkin. But I just don't see Luke Davies-Uniacke to be at the caliber of Christian Petrarca, Zach Butters, even Brayshaw and Sarong. He hasn't done it consistently and had a finals campaign. Now, I'm not asking North to win 10 games, 11 games, make the finals. I'm asking him to be the All-Australian squad. I'm asking him to carry them to 6 or 7 wins. I'm asking him to have consistency with his game and his body.
Yeah, I think this year's the year he probably has genuine help besides him. Jai Simpkin, he had a good preseason from all reports. If he can come back into the side pretty soon, he's got the new draftees as well around.
He's got Colby McKercher. Right. He's got obviously Harry Sheasel, won the best and fairest last year. He's got Tom Powell. Hopefully he's developing. He has more talent around him.
Yeah, and also up forward, he's got Nick Larkey to kick the ball to. So I think now there's and not to mention, they've got Alistair Clarkson for the full year uninterrupted. So another preseason under their belt. That's right, as far as we know. Until he gets sin bin for life for a slur. I think this is the year where he just needs to get himself fit, play 20 plus games, and probably crack the squad.
That's the thing. It's year 7. he hasn't played 100 games. He's so often not been on the park. Now, he has been better at that the last couple of years, but even when he was building momentum last year, what happens? Laid out. And then that laid out becomes a 4-week injury. We just can't afford to have that anymore if the North want to drag themselves out of the doldrums of the worst era of their entire existence.
And let's not forget, 3 wins for the year last year. So we're not asking him to win a dozen.
No.
But win half a dozen. That's already 100% return.
Yes.
And in those games, we want Luke Davies-Uniacke to be the reason.
Grab the game by the horn and say, I'm the best player on the field right now. You can't stop me. I'm going to get North Melbourne this game.
Yeah, that's right, because we've seen it. I've seen it. I remember 2022, he was the best player on ground along with Ben Mackay.
Is that the game they're up like 6 goals and folded? Yeah,
Yes.
I remember that
and
one.
Then Josh,
North looked great.
Nick Dacos, just turned on the last quarter.
Nick Dacos. I don't think he'll ever appear on this list of players we need to break out, unfortunately. Last one, Nick. This is one we both had penciled, and this is a former Pegs boy as well. Went to our alma mater, as they say over in America. Number 1 draft pick, 2017 draft. I'm going to let you go in on him, Nick. It is Cameron Rayner from the Brisbane Lions. What do we need to see from Cam Rayner this year?
We need to see him play consistently in the right position. Is he a mid? Is he going to be a power forward that pinch hits in the mid? Is he going to play half back to get himself in the game? I don't know. What is it? Is it the tank issue? I want to see him be a centre square player, a centre clearance player that charges forwards and can kick goals, because we know he's capable. He's quite strong in the hips, but we just have never seen continuity and seeing him literally rip games, and grab them by the horn.
Yeah, cool. Look at his numbers. Just the raw numbers, they're very unimpressive. He's never averaged over 15 disposals a game. I know he's played half forward. Never averaged over 15 disposals a game. He's never averaged over a goal. He's averaged 1 goal or just flat on 1.1.
It's usually against Collingwood at the Gabba.
Yeah, but he's never had a consistent output as a forward, and he's never been asked to be a midfielder yet. So that's why his disposals are low, because he's behind Neil, he's behind McCluggage, he's behind Josh Dunkley, he's behind Jared Lyons when he was dominating a couple of years ago, he's behind Dane Zorko. I feel like if Brisbane want to go to the next level, then Cam Rayner needs to play like a star.
Yeah.
Doesn't need to be a superstar, doesn't need to be an All-Australian, but somebody you can rely on each week to give you a big output. Because with Ashcroft coming back later in the year as well, his role will probably diminish and opportunities will diminish. Now is the time for Cam Rayner.
No, I'm glad you said that. Ashcroft is not going to be featuring till mid-season at
Probably
least?
around 16.
I see it as an audition tape. Go get yourself fit and start in that centre square. This is your time now.
It is your time. I mean, Lachie Neale's getting up there in age. Josh Dunkley is probably in his prime. Why can't you be the 3rd or 4th guy? I know McCluggage is looking to dominate as well into the midfield and be more of a centre square player than a wingman. But Cam Rayner, you're the number 1 draft pick. You need to start impacting games more often.
7 years as well means you've had 7 pre-seasons. So you should be
I think through his ACL one of those years.
Yes,
but still,
that's right.
it's 7th year around the club.
Look, you should be coming into your prime right now. So, look, I hope we do see it, because
I would love to see it. These players are on this list for a reason, Nick. We actually really like these players, but we think they can achieve more than what they're putting out.
I mean, if he becomes that player that we're asking and wanting him to be, probably means Brisbane and Premiers next year.
It's scary. That's why we're putting him on the list.
This
Because
season.
if he can elevate, then, geez, their list is as good as anyone. It already probably is, but you add Ashcroft coming in later the year with Cam Rayner, with natural improvement from the younger players like Coleman and Lohman, then that's a scary, scary sight. Those are the players already in the system we think can go to the next level, Nick. What about the draftees from the 2023 draft? Who are the players you're looking forward to watching in the opening rounds?
I'm looking at Riley Sanders, because from all reports, great inside mid, and he's got some silk as well on the outside with some explosive pace. So
he looked magnificent in that preseason game against Hawthorn. I think he had 30 touches, which is something you very rarely see.
He'll slot straight into that team for round 1.
He's probably their number 3 mid. You got Bond, you got Libba, and Riley Sanders. It's
pretty scary.
With Smith out for the season.
Treloar's...
Oh, sorry, Treloar. I misspoke. Treloar is number 3. Sometimes I often forget Adam Treloar is on the Dogs. He's such a reliable, consistent player, but they've got so many good players in that area of the ground. Treloar is number 3 mid. He probably slots in number 4, number 5. Obviously, the McRae currently nursing a hamstring injury, but he looks like a really promising player. And the thing is, the Dogs got him for not very much, because they did a pick swap with the Gold Coast Suns this off-season, because I think they had Croft come in as a father-son, and the Suns had all these academy picks, so they were willing to give up pick 6, so they've landed Riley Sanders. And at the time, we thought, why do the Dogs need another mid? Well, we've seen in the preseason games, he could actually be a very, very good player, absolutely a jet early in his career. Next player I want to talk about is Colby McKercher from the North Melbourne Football Club, formerly from the Tasmania Devils. He was picked 2, and he looks like an absolute jet, Nick. Inside, outside mix, delivers the football so beautifully. I think he'll play more of half-back to start the year, but he could be one of those players which rises North up the ladder in the next coming years.
Left footer as well, and I think he's going to be that accumulator type of half-back, drifting into the midfield. he's going to go close to the rising star, isn't he?
Well,
Just the way, from what we've seen.
Not to forward sizzle our own picks, but I think we both have him as the rising star just because the role looks beautiful, his disposal looks beautiful, and he looks like he's a really talented young player with a good head on his shoulders. I think he had a very high leadership role at the Tasmania team, which performed very well in the Talent League last year. I love Colby McKercher going to this year. I think North have really nailed this draft.
We're going to head over to the West. We've heard so much about him, but Harley Reid, pick number 1. We know what he's capable of. He's going to be that impactful burst player. Probably not going to be an accumulator from what we've heard and what we've seen already in those practice games. He's not going to be the Harry Sheasel type of halfback and just rack them up. But he's going to be that impactful burst player.
So I think they're trying to use him as a combination of a halfback role and a midfield role. I think early in the preseason they flagged that they'll use him and Yo sort of interchanging of halfback and midfield. But he looks like such a good disposal of the football. He's such a big body already. We know he's going to be a star down the line. Now, I'm not going to go into where he wants to leave, whether he wants to be at West Coast or not, whether has got no credibility at the moment because he claimed that West Coast wouldn't pick him. I'm not going to go into all of that. Harley Reid is a talent, could be one of the best players in the league in a couple of years' time. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what he can do on a team, which, to be honest, Nick, we have no interest in watching week to week. But Harley Reid makes us want to watch the West Coast Eagles.
Yeah, they're definitely. Next one, we got Nick Watson, pick number 5, Eastern Rangers. Hawks were so heavily into him. I think they interviewed him 6 times and they identified this guy's a goal kicker. We need a bit of forward prowess and someone that actually knows, how to kick a goal on the forward line to accompany. I mean, let's face it, Luke Bruce has been an absolute legend for the club.
Best small forward I've seen.
Oh,
and that's a big call. But he's got 3 flags. He's performed so well in all of them. And even to this day, in his mid-30s, he's still a superstar in my opinion.
And I mean, when they lost Gunston, that forward line was starved of a bit of talent. So they've got Gunston back, coincidentally. Now they've got Nick Watson and Jack Inman as well. But I think Watson's, from all reports, knows how to kick a goal.
Absolutely. Out of the Eastern Rangers. Similar to another pick. The last player we're going to preview as part of our rookies or first-year players to watch over the coming rounds. It is Caleb Windsor. Now, Caleb Windsor plays opening night, actually, for the Melbourne-Sydney game. He is a wingman. It was pick 7 to the Melbourne Demons. Now, I've seen him play. He kicked 2 goals in the practice match. He looks like
outside of 50.
A fantastic runner. Looks very silky. He looks like a good addition to this Melbourne team, which sometimes doesn't always have the best ball users because Petrarca's kicking let him down. Oliver's kicking let him down. I'm not going to talk about what Jack Viney's kicking did in that semi-final against the Blues. Probably cost him the game. Caleb Windsor could be a fantastic addition to Melbourne. Now, I remember going to the draft. Do we think Melbourne needed a midfielder, at least a wingman? Probably not. They've got Langdon, they've got Hunter, but he looks like the real deal, Windsor.
Yeah, I think they need pace and silk because, look, on the wings, you got Ed Langdon, probably isn't the best ball user, has some pace, but I feel like that's what's let them down. They don't have that silky, quick, ball user inside 50. Petrarca, he's not the best ball user in the world. Even Clayton Oliver, these guys aren't elite kicks, by their own admission as well. So I feel like them getting a nice, silky outside player. I think Salem's probably one of the nicest kicks in the comp, but he probably doesn't have the pace.
No, but they have used him at CBAs recently in the preseason. I thought they'd get him more into the midfield. Also picked up Jack Billings as a DFA this offseason. So they're trying to change the midfield mix slightly to have more better users. And Caleb Windsor looks like a fantastic user and can't wait to watch him on opening night. Nick, those are the next generation players we think we're going to break out and also the first year players. But let's get over all that, Nick. It's time for the big calls and predictions. I want to see your top 4, your Brownlow, your Rising Star, all the awards that are going to give out at the end of the year. I want to hear what you have to say about them right now. Hello, everybody. I hope you're enjoying this episode of the Time On podcast. I'm just stopping by to say the footy is back. Yes, it is officially back on Thursday night when Melbourne take on Sydney, and the only place you want to watch it is at the Orang Hotel. Thursday night is also steak night, so head down, have yourself a lovely meal, a couple of drinks, tell them Time On sent you, and most importantly, enjoy the footy. That is the Orang Hotel, proudly sponsoring the Time On podcast. Located on High Street, Armidale, Melbourne.
Das, I've got my top 4. I think Collingwood and Brisbane are still the clear 1 and 2 in the competition. I've got Carlton making the jump from 5th into the 4. And I've got the Giants. I've got the Giants improving and locking in a double chance this season. So it's a bit unusual because usually there's a smoky that sort of jumps up outside the 8 into the top 4. I don't know. I'm going to go against the data, and I'm actually going to pick teams 1 and 2, Collingwood, Brisbane. And I think Carlton and Giants, there's enough improvement in their teams. The lists are good enough. I think the Blues, their forward line, could be an absolute devastating, destructive partnership. And look at the Giants, their backline's so settled and their midfield's so polished. I think they could take a next step as well. Individual awards, I think the Brownlow has to be Nick Dacos. I'm going to back in Nick Dacos.
Biased.
I mean, he should have won it, let's face it, last year. But not that it doesn't mean anything, right? But I just think Nick Dacos will poll enough votes. He plays the game that catches the umpires. You know, he accumulates, kicks goals, does a few flashy things, but more importantly, just wins games for Collingwood. So I think that's why.
Yep.
Rising star, I've got McKercher.
Yep.
I think he's going to play that game. He's going to accumulate enough. I think he's going to get enough of the ball as well. And yeah, I don't think he'll be in bursts and patches. He'll just be across the board. Maybe like a 20+ disposal per game player.
And a high efficiency, though.
Coleman, I'm thinking Charlie Curnow for the 3rd year in a row.
Now, just for history's sake, that doesn't happen very often.
It doesn't. I was going to say, has it? Maybe Lloyd back in the day?
I don't think Lloyd did a 3-peat. I reckon he maybe did 2 in a row. I think G-Trade maybe did 2, maybe Fev. I don't think Buddy even went 3 in a row. So
it is hard.
We know how supremely talented he is, but the chances are that he probably won't win it. But there's no other obvious pick for it.
No. Well, it's like, is Jez Camry going to climb up the ranks? Is Nick Larkey going to have a season like no other? There's probably his 2 biggest competitors.
I think last year was Tex and Nick Larkey were the 2nd and 3rd. I just don't think either of them are going to be good enough to beat Curnow because he's playing in a good team and he gets so much service from their great midfield. And he's a deadeye. Curnow is actually a very, very good set shot. So he's a really good pick, Nick.
And a couple of time-on unique ones here. So a most improved player. So we're not saying...
The MIP?
The MIP. We're not saying a player that's going to, sort of on the cusp to All-Australian, but I think something like underneath that squad. So someone's gone from like a fringe player or someone that has a bit of potential to a certain starter and probably, in the best half dozen to a dozen players on that team.
Yeah, and influential on the results weekly.
Yeah. So
who's your MIP, Nick?
Finn Callahan, GWS.
Finn Callahan.
He actually played a brilliant final series.
He's a very good player. Top 5 pick as well.
Yeah, very good size as well. So he's got all the makings. I think he could be the player that just takes him to that next level. Like, that's all that has to happen with GWS. They got enough cream at the top. It's these sort of players that just need to take that next jump, bridge their worst and best, and, who knows?
I think he started very well in the first round. I think he sustained maybe a shoulder injury in the second round against the Eagles in Perth. Then he had a bit of a fluctuation the next couple of months, but he came on strong at the end of the year.
It's only his 4th year this year?
Yes. He's had injuries to deal with in the past, and he's a big body, so it might take him time to develop. I think his comparison coming to the league was Marcus Bonampelli, so I think that's a very good pick, Nick.
And the last one, Defensive Player of the Year. So I guess it's like an homage to Spud's Golden Fist.
Oh, it's a bit like that,
bit like that.
Yeah, it's more like in the NBA, in the NFL as well, you've got these players which aren't likely to win the
They don't have the pizzazz.
Or the MVPs, but we know how important key backs are in this league.
Well, it's funny, they're not going to win your Brownlows or MVPs, but they'll win you premierships.
Absolutely.
These are the guys that actually win you premierships.
Put that on the poster.
Definitely. So for mine, it's Cal Wilkie. I think he's...
The accountant?
He's one of the best lockdown defenders. All-Australian last year as well. I reckon he's going to back it up. Ross Lyon must love this guy. Like, he's just like... He embodies my game style. Like, you are the man.
He's like Zach Dawson on steroids.
Yeah.
He's like, I've got someone that would just buy into everything I want to give to this club, but is also supremely talented and just locks away the best forwards in the league. It would be Cal Wilkie. I love that pick. And if he had this award last year, he would have won it. Number 1 defender on the number 1 defense. I really like that pick, Nick.
Das, tell me your predictions.
Now, my top 4 is similar to yours. I've got Collingwood. I think Collingwood is still the benchmark of this competition. It's hard to go past them. Brisbane as well. They've added to that team with Tom Duday coming into the squad. Already supremely talented. Very unlucky not to win the flag last year. I've got the Giants in there. Now, the Giants, will they come in the home and away ladder? I think 7th last year.
7th, yep.
They performed like a top 4 side for probably the last 3 months of the year. Very unlucky not to make the grand final.
2 very convincing finals wins as well.
So 2 great finals wins away as well. And they just lost to the Magpies. I think they're a top 4 team. But you've talked to me before the show. There's always a side that comes from outside the top 8 to make the top 4. Now, I'm racking my brain with you. Who could that be? It's not going to be Essendon, okay? The Bombers are not coming top 4. If they did, I would love that, but it's very, very unlikely.
It's not going to be Freo.
Not going to be Freo. I don't think it's going to be Adelaide either. I just don't think they've got enough in defence right now. I love the midfield's developing. Their forward line's fantastic. It's landed on 2 teams. I've landed on the Saints and the Dogs. Now, the Saints made finals last year, but I think there's room for improvement. I think they've gotten better this offseason. And the Dogs, well, obviously they fit that criteria of having missed the 8, going to the top 4.
And knocking on the door. Like, let's not kid ourselves that they made a grand final 3 years ago, made finals 2022, and then should have made finals last year. So it's like not like they're strangers to finals, but so they've been genuinely knocking on the door.
If you had to ask me for one of them, I'm going to go bold. I'm going to pick the Western Bulldogs. This is a team which has talent all over the park. They have the best player in the league still, in my opinion.
Oh, their top 6 is pound for pound, probably it stacks up to the best teams in the comp for their best 6.
And we talked last week about forwards. Mackay and Curnow is a great combination to have. Norton and Ugle-Hagan, and throw in Sam Darcy in there as well. They've got the tall timber to match up against the best defense.
Throwing the little man as well, Waitman.
Tony Waitman. I mean, yeah, it's a team which should be performing, and if they don't, we've talked about what could happen at the end of the season. Brownlow. Now, the Brownlow obvious pick is Nick Dacos. I'm going to pick Nick Dacos as well because he should have won
David
it.
King.
He should have won it last year. David King was on at 50-1. He is very upset that he didn't win last year. Dacos is arguably the best player in the league. He racks them up. He plays for the best team in the competition. He has the most eye-catching play style of anyone. He, in my opinion, will win the Brownlow this year. Rising star, similar to you, Colby McKercher for all we said before. Coleman also gone with Curnow. Is there anyone else we could have gone with besides Curnow?
I mean, look, yeah, history says he's not going to win a third one in a row. Tom Lynch, Tex, Jez Cameron, Tomahawk. I'm just trying to think who's that emerging. Is it going to be Aaron Norton? Probably not.
Oh, yeah.
Jamari Ugle-Hagan, is he going to take this massive step to be Coleman medal winner?
He'd have to kick like 65, 70. I think he hasn't kicked 45
No,
yet,
that's right. That's right. That's the goal range we're looking at. Like, you have to kick 60 goals. I mean, I think Tex might be the only really likely challenger.
Especially with the Thilthorpe news, the fact that he could miss 4 to 10 weeks. You might have to continue to play at a high standard. But I'm keeping it simple. Curnow is the best forward in the competition. It makes sense to make him for the Coleman.
Bloody good.
You don't give out the Coleman in the finals. Most improved player. I've got an interesting one. This player's already a pretty good player, but I think he could go All-Australian squad level. It is Jai Newcombe from the Hawthorn Football Club. We know Will Day will miss the first couple of rounds. I think a lot of pressure is going to go onto Jai Newcombe's shoulders. And we've seen in the preseason, I think he had 37 touches against the Dogs midfield.
Tore it up.
He can rack them up. The question mark is actually his tackling. So he isn't a great tackler, despite the fact he had the most tackles ever, I think, for a player on debut. He averages like 2-3 tackles a game. If you could add that to his game, the defensive side, he could be one of the star midfielders of this competition. I love Jai Newcombe's game. Also, most improved player. There's a lot of narrative baked into that. He was a mid-season draft pick. So going from an All-Australian squad from a mid-season draft, that's a pretty big leap. It's a pretty big leap. Finn Callahan was pick 5. I know supremely talented, but Newcombe going from not in the league to being one of the best players in the league would be a humongous leap forward. DPOY, I've gone with Sam Taylor. I think Sam Taylor is the best defender in the league, but there could be criteria similar to the NBA awards. He didn't play enough games last year to make All-Australian squad. Cal Wilkie never misses games. So Sam Taylor will need to play, I think, 16, 17 games to be my DPOY. But even you wouldn't argue he's the best key back in the league.
He's a star backman. And so unassuming as well. But he's the glue to GWS.
He's a faceless man. I think he could pray to the many-faced God. He could be our own Jack and Hagar. Because if you walk down the street, people wouldn't know who Sam Taylor is. I told my dad, best player in the league, Sam Taylor's like, I don't really know who that is. Because he doesn't do media.
2 first names. Exactly.
Yeah. But he is
beige sort of character, isn't he?
He's a bit of a beige character. He is a tall, white, handsome male, but no one really knows much about Sam Taylor other than that he's from Western Australia.
He just beats you full forward.
He's a bloody good fullback.
Yeah, he just rocks up and beats you.
Those are our predictions for 2024. Nick, is it nearly time to end the show and talk about the games that are coming up on Thursday night?
We got footy.
It is Footy Christmas Eve. What are the games that are coming up on opening round? If you can figure out what the hell opening round is, because I still don't know what it is.
I'm still trying to wrap my head around. Sydney, Melbourne, SCG on a Thursday night. If you that's an interesting one to start the season.
Why is it Sydney, Melbourne? How do we land on that?
I have zero idea.
Is it because we want to take the game to Sydney and because Grundy's left and you got Gawn versus Grundy? Is that the rationale behind it?
Maybe. And then you got...
That doesn't make me think, I want to watch this game. It's Gawn versus Grundy.
No, definitely
If you put Collingwood on there, even if you put Brisbane at the Gabba against a really good team, that probably interests me more.
That would make a little bit more sense. But, the more you try and apply logic, just you're going to do your nuts in. So there's no point.
I'm definitely going to do our nuts in, Nick.
Brisbane Carlton.
Brisbane Carlton, it is a rematch of the preliminary final. Now, we know Zach Williams is returning. That was announced today. He has missed a year of football. He's a very, very fine halfback, former GWS Giant. It'd be great to see him back strutting his stuff. But just back to Sydney, Melbourne. Who are you tipping for that game?
I'd probably tip. It's so early to think about teams out. Oh, look, I'm going to say Melbourne.
Say Melbourne? Yeah. I'm going to say Melbourne as well. I think Melbourne is just the stronger side right now. Max Gawn. Max Gawn, Clayton Oliver, Christian Matraka are playing. Stephen May and Jake Lever are there as well. I'm probably going to pick Melbourne most times this year. Brisbane and Carlton and Gabba at 7:40. Also, I should mention all the games are 10 minutes earlier this year. So 7:40 used to be 7:50 on a Friday night. So they brought those games forward. Even Saturday, there was about 10 minutes forward. Do you like that? Giving games a bit earlier?
Yeah, I'm a bit
Or
indifferent.
you like a late sort of trickle into the footy?
I like the late trickle in, yeah.
For people at home with no lives, we're waiting for these games to start. So the games are 10 minutes forward this year. Brisbane and Carlton, Friday night at the Gabba. Nick, who are you tipping in that one?
Brizzy. I don't think they're going to lose a game this year at the Gabba.
Again?
Yeah, again.
I like Brisbane as well in that one. We'll move on to Metricon Stadium, Nick. Who do you have in this one?
I don't know why this game's even played this
What do you
weekend,
mean?
to be honest.
Well,
It's
it's actually a
every
very
year.
fine point Jared Watley made on AFL 360 is like if Vince McMahon was booking it. So you got to have Damien Hardwick in the rivalry matchup. Instantly to
Round
start
one?
the year.
Oh, I know.
It gets get a bit of interest, but it's probably not a marquee game. If you're going to get 4 games on, you wouldn't pick this.
I think the Suns, though. I think they'll get up.
Yeah, I think
just what I
it's
saw.
time for the Rising Suns.
Yeah, I think it is. I don't know. Richmond are probably going to go a little bit backwards this year, but we'll see.
We'll see. Last game of the round. Do we even need to mention it? Or?
Yes, because I will actually be present. I bought
No.
myself a ticket. Yes.
Wait, you're heading up to Sydney this
What?
weekend.
It does. Why do you sound
we
surprised?
have Nick on the ground this week.
Why do you sound surprised? Yeah, I booked it a couple of weeks ago, and I'm like, you know what? Fuck it. I've
Actually,
had a big
looking at what
summer.
you're wearing, I'm not surprised at all, actually.
Yes, flying in. It's a FIFO. Well, I'm actually staying the night with our good friend Daniel. So
You're seeing Daniel.
Yeah, that's right. So
He'll be sure to cheer you up talking about Essendon.
I'd love that. Flying in Saturday morning and then flying out Sunday night. So it's a long weekend as well. Why not?
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, I cannot wait to nuff out. And a good friend Frank as well, who'll be joining us as well.
Have you been to the Western Sydney Stadium
Never
before?
been. This is my first and potentially only time, but that's all right. I'll tick them off.
What do you mean? Opening round next year?
We'll be in Vegas. Jeez. This is going to be... We're underdogs. Collingwood underdogs.
Slight underdogs. I think it's like 3 points or something
And
like
I'm
that.
still backing us. I think we've got what it takes. We've been there. We've done that.
Any sort of injury news? Any updates? I think you had Jeremy Howe's under a cloud
Under a
this
bit of
week.
a cloud, Jeremy Howe. Look, I think we actually got a pretty good bill of health. I think Nathan Murphy's not going to play. All things aside, pretty healthy. And I think GWS, I think Isaac Cumming and maybe Finn Callahan could
Yes.
be out. So
It's going to be hard to win most improved player if you're playing this year.
yeah, his chances are hurt in round one or opening round. No, I think Collingwood will be just good enough.
I'm going to tip Collingwood as well. This year, I'm tipping Collingwood as long as the Dacos boys are healthy and pretty much you have a semblance of a back line because your back line is elite and you've got 2 tremendous midfielders in addition to Penrith, Sidebottom, Mitchell, all the other boys. If Pies are healthy, I'm going to tip Pies this year. And I think you're more healthy than the Giants actually this weekend, so I will be tipping Collingwood.
Footy is back. Thursday marks 26 weeks of back-to-back footy action. It's great.
Has it really registered in your head yet?
It hasn't.
For
It
me,
hasn't.
because we've got the show on a Monday.
Yeah.
We're still talking about the preseason games. I haven't quite clicked into action that Thursday's a game for 4 premiership points.
Yeah, it hasn't quite clicked in. I think it will click in when my back hits the seat in the plane.
And you're going to fall asleep on the plane like
Absolutely.
you would at a Liverpool game?
No, I'll probably just download some offline games and watch them. Seasons 22 and 23.
What's it? 2023 recap. You're watching the Taking the Steps documentary for a 15th time, I'm sure, Nick. That's all for episode 37 of the Time On podcast. And the next time you hear us in your ears and watch us on YouTube, we'll be talking about actual games of football. We've waited so long, Nick. It is time to get stuck into the best sport in the world. We cannot wait. We'll see you all next week. Any last words from you, Nick, as you venture into Western Sydney?
All I'm saying is giddy up and enjoy the ride. It's going to be a great season.
There you have it.